Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So we have quite a few guests tonight. I'd say this afternoon, it's a full house. So we've got Hunter Loftis, Hunter Brown, and Haley Keith. So how is everybody doing?
I'm doing phenomenal, personally. I think it's great to see another Hunter. I think we're underrepresented in today's society. I think there need to be more Hunters out there. However, for today's stream, I think it's going to be a little bit confusing.
All right, so I'm going to call you Brown and you Loftis. So that's how we're alleviating the confusion there.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
So Loftis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. This is the first time I've ever been on a streaming show, though.
Yeah? Well, you look super nervous. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm super nervous.
So we've had this same conversation, or an iteration of this conversation, twice in the past 2 weeks. So we went out for drinks Friday night. Then we had, and Hunter, I should have invited you. I know that you were feeling a little under the weather this week.
Yeah.
So I think we hung out, what was it, Wednesday night or Tuesday night?
I can never tell which Hunter you're talking about.
Loftis.
I think it was like Tuesday or something. Yeah.
Awesome. So you just dropped some wisdom, some nuggets on Molly and Christina. Also Raj and Tony there too. Yeah. So I guess let's pick up where that conversation, or let's revisit that conversation. So you just left Facebook to take on a role at Adobe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of months ago.
And the thing that I think is the most interesting part is how you kind of brought that opportunity into your life. Do you want to tell us that story?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think it's so much bringing the opportunity into my life. I felt more like the opportunity found me, but I think that's kind of how it feels when you are navigating your career well in tech. I want to throw a caveat out there. I'm a software engineer, right? So I know that you're, this is a get a job and get an analytics job, and I've never had an analytics job, so I'm not going to pretend to be able to explain how one gets an analytics job. But in tech in general, something that I didn't know when I started my career is that most large tech companies are like this thin veneer of proprietary technology on top of a huge mountain of open source and open standards. And what you don't really realize is that so much work in tech happens outside of the companies and between the companies. And you'll have Google and Facebook and Adobe and Microsoft people in a room talking about W3C standards. And so a lot of the work, you're not beholden to a company for. And so anyway, I encourage people to find opportunities in the communities that they're interested in. And the thing that I'm interested in, it happens to be graphics and cutting edge web work. So, last year I was working on a heavy graphics application that also used some cutting edge web APIs to play Dungeons and Dragons online with my friends. Turns out there are some folks at Adobe that are, really also, D&D geeks like me. And we started talking about that. So it had nothing to do with my work at Facebook, and it had nothing to do with Adobe. It was actually this sort of shared interest in Dungeons and Dragons, WebRTC, web components, WebGL, and beautiful visuals too. And eventually, it just so happened that a role at Adobe that was a perfect fit for me came online, right? And it's on a team that does digital imaging and web innovation, which are my two favorite things smashed together. And so I was an obvious candidate for that role. And that's what I'm doing today, right? It doesn't really feel like work because it's what I was doing last year for free on the weekends, except now I'm just getting paid to do it.
Well, okay. To parallel some advice that we've had for our audience is it's really good to get involved in kind of the things that you're interested in. So for example, long time, Molly, who was out with us at Six and Stones the other night, she is interested in environmental science and she's actively learning coding. So her getting involved with nonprofits, which next week we have Cape Fear Collective coming on, and they're a nonprofit that focuses on, I think, ecology and just nonprofit work in the Carolinas. So her maybe volunteering for them is kind of like a backdoor or a side door into potentially getting a full-time job there. Because I think the thing that you've done is that you've executed and you've shown that you have a track record, and you've also built a relationship with these people, which I think is so important.
Yeah. I think getting involved, what you first said is right on. Getting involved with the people rather than the companies, because people gravitate towards what they're interested in. And so what you'll find is that you'll work with a group of people like I worked at Salesforce before, and I still work with some of those people. We're not at the same company anymore, but we're still interested in the same space in technology. So we see each other at W3C working group meetings. We see each other at conferences. We see each other on GitHub and on Stack Overflow and on Reddit and on Hacker News and on these communities that people build that are outside of the curated spaces that are a little bit more corporate, or your employer's spaces.
Yeah, well, I think that gives you an opportunity to kind of guide your own ship, so to speak, throughout your career. Like if you're, because thinking about so the guest we had for the lecture on Tuesday was Shashank, and he said that the first job he got, he just loathed. He just did not enjoy it. So like getting stuck in that role and doing that for years qualifies you to do another version of that for more years. So like the more you get kind of stuck down the wrong rabbit hole, but what it sounds like what you can do is just kind of sidestep that by getting involved with online communities, and that way you can test what you're actually curious about and like get your hands dirty, so to speak.
Yeah. It's really easy to accidentally become an expert in something that you don't necessarily want to be an expert in, right? So I love the punchy title of your stream, get a job, get an analytics job. But I think that after you make that first step, after you have that first analytics job, you need to get a little more specific and have a more strategic plan about what your next job is and how your career is going to form some kind of an arc. And it needs to be specific to you, right? Like, do you care about a domain? Like I love graphics, but some people don't really care what domain they're in. But some people, I've got a friend who's right now looking for a good opportunity in renewable energy. That's what he cares about. He built a house with a solar roof and he drives 2 electric cars. And he's always talking about like riding on sunshine, right? And like, that's what he cares about. And so he, his strategy is looking in that vertical. But I've got another friend who she has for the last 5 years never worked a Friday. She just loves 3-day weekends. She loves 4-day work weeks. And so
is this the van life girl?
This isn't van life girl. Actually, this is has been working 4-day weeks at Fortune 10 companies for several years now. And that's something that she negotiates into every offer she gets. And if it's not on the table, then she doesn't even consider the role. But she forfeits other opportunities because that's a requirement. So you need to know what you actually care about in order to be strategic in your career.
Yeah. Well, okay. This is actually making me think of Haley here. So Haley, I know that you're an interesting kind of brand stack in that you are interested in data science, but you're also interested in content creation. So the kind of the crossroads between the two of those.
Yeah. I love data. I love, I see everything, I guess, through both like an analyst lens and also a content creation lens. So there's data and there's also a story to be told in another way. So,
yeah. So I think that, because you approached or just reached out to me like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that we've actually got, Albert here on the channel here, he broke my heart and he left us. So now I'm happy for Al. So Al was our former social media manager, has moved on to a full-time analyst role. So mission accomplished there. But then it kind of left a void of, I'm wearing so many different hats. So you're kind of seeing it a little bit, Haley, of like how I get scattered on occasion and then I try to come back to like center. Thank you. But yeah, so you reached out to me and then you were like, here's the work that I've done. It's kind of unique in your perspective because everything that you do is public facing because it's marketing stuff. So you're lucky in that regard.
Yeah. when things are a fit, they're a fit. Like Loftis said earlier, things just work out sometimes, and it doesn't really feel like work. Hey, Albert.
So, all right. So Loftis, let's talk a little bit about. You were talking about open source projects. I'm curious if that applies to the analytics space, but essentially what you got to do is you got to work with people at Adobe on their open source project like well before you got the job, right?
Yeah, and that's also not just true at Adobe. I've been on the other side of that as well because I worked at Heroku for several years, and I love working in open source. I like standards. I like web technologies. That's a space that I really enjoy. And at Heroku, I get to experience the other side where I was frequently working alongside people who did not work for my employer, who did not work for Heroku, who were just passionate about Node.js or Python or Java or whatever. And they wanted to collaborate with us to make our platform better, or to make maybe a shared system that we both use in open source better. And then, of course, when it came time for us to, when a role opened up on my team or an adjacent team, and it's like, who would be a good fit for this? If you have already been working with someone and you know that they can deliver, you know that they have the same engineering sort of, philosophy as the company, it really reduces your risk. It reduces how nervous you are about extending an offer to somebody if you've spent the last 6 months collaborating with them outside of the bounds of the corporation.
Okay, and this is a perfect segue into you were talking about the perspective of the hiring manager, like what they're looking for, because they're not necessarily looking for the optimal best candidate. They just want to minimize their risk and not look bad. In 6 months, right?
So for some context here, I like to think of myself as a software engineer who took a side quest into management. I spent several years as a manager at Salesforce. I actually ended up becoming a director before I decided this is not the life for me, and I want to build things again. And the most useful part of that side quest was seeing what life is like for a manager and what you care about. And there were a lot of things that I learned there. One of them is that as a manager, I used to think that it was, I'm a very frugal person, but I used to think it was kind of like getting a deal. Like you've got a budget and you're trying to, hire people to fit that budget. This is mostly for Fortune 500 companies, but like that's not how it works. You have a head count, you have an organization, and you have a set number of roles in that organization that report to you. And it's not really attached to a budget. Each one of those roles has a range of budgetary requirements. If you're a, E5 at Facebook, your salary range is X to Y. But it's not like a fixed pie, and you're not trying to find like a good deal when you're hiring somebody. So your incentive is actually to find someone who can fit that role, and who, when 6 months go by and it's time to do calibration and performance reviews, so you look like a competent manager, you have not hired someone who was a poor fit for that role. Like that's one of your biggest drivers. You would much rather pay someone more if you're confident that they're able to actually deliver the work than to, gamble on a bargain, because that's not really, no one ever rewards a manager for saving $10,000 on a hire.
Well, okay, I'm going to relate this back to signaling theory. If someone is willing to work for $25 an hour, or in the tech space, like if I was a software developer who was happy with $12 an hour, that's a signal to you that hey, this person only thinks they're worth X amount of money. Like, and it's funny because I've seen my entrepreneurship friends who were cheap for years and years and years, and then they got exactly what they paid for, and it was just headache after headache. Because I think that from the employer's perspective, you see it as an investment. Like this person is going to give me X amount of return, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit with the episode with Molly, but like getting paid what you're worth it's what you're willing to work for is a signal into itself, because people who are willing to work for a lower rate just I don't know. I mean, it's almost like a distrust. Like I would distrust them because it's like either you don't respect yourself or you aren't worth very much. And I don't mean this like as a person, but like in this organizational setting.
You have to be realistic and strategic, right? And one of the best ways to find out what the market is like is one, to network with people casually. And some people don't like to talk about money, and that's totally fine. Respect their wishes and don't pry. You might find that one-on-one, having a beer with somebody, they're especially somebody who's in your field, somebody that you could potentially look to as a mentor. I would like to be this person someday. They might actually open up to you about either what kind of their band looks like today, or maybe the steps that they took to get there and what they look like. They might even be able to be a good sounding board for you about whether an offer is realistic and reasonable, since they'll know the industry probably better than you will.
Yeah, and I think that attitude about everyone being really hush-hush about their salary is somewhat changing. I think people are a lot, because it benefits the employer, not the employees.
Yeah, for the most part. It can also benefit an employee, though. If you know that you're dramatically overpaid, it can benefit you.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, this kind of brings up a conversation that me and Hunter had last Friday. So, Hunter, I know you're getting, and Hunter, or Loftis. So Brown, I had a conversation with Hunter Brown about the offers he has coming in, and how, like, when it comes, like, so you're a junior now. So let's say you keep getting these offers. I want you to like negotiate with me and go on these interviews and potentially get some offers. And you were like, no, I don't, we're friends. Like, I don't want to be hostile. I think it's an interesting conversation to be had, because it's by being kind of not willing to go and venture out, it's going to limit kind of your self-image on some level, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. And you, after we had that initial conversation, you had brought up something along the lines of, you said I just don't see it that way. I see it as I want to pay a competitive wage to my employees, and we're friends outside of that. And I think that you bring up a good point when you say that times are changing. The way I was raised, the way my parents were raised, and they raised me, is that it's something that that sometimes can be impolite to talk about around coworkers, because it may make them feel less than, or maybe even make you feel less than. But I think in a time where it turns out money isn't everything. Your salary isn't what defines you. It's the work that you do. It's the image that you put out there. I think that there could be some room for a little bit of wiggle room there.
Yeah, and I mean, also too, I want what's best for you too. Like, if you find an offer that's going to pay you, an astronomically high salary, then you're wasting your time working for me. You should go and pursue that, because it might be a better fit. I just don't want you to feel like emotionally dependent upon me, if that makes any sense.
No, don't worry about that.
Are we watching a breakup on air right now?
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, go off into the world. No, but I think it's an interesting point, though, around, it is an uncomfortable conversation, but you should, and this kind of brings up an interesting conversation, Hunter Loftis, around how, at a high level, the relationship between recruiters and top talent in the tech space, how that functions. Because if you are like a world-known software engineer, you have multiple options afforded to you at any given time. So it's you're getting paid top dollar, and you're also probably doing the work that, Hunter Loftis, you're that right now. Like, you're doing the work you want to do, and you're getting paid really well.
Yeah, actually, both of those are true, and I'm happy with that. The only thing that I would object to is I'm really good at what I do, and I'm experienced, but I'm not a famous or world-known software developer. That's I do know some of those. All
right. I'm being a little hyperbolic here.
Yeah.
Okay, but what you did say at 6 and 7 the other night was that we were talking about skill stacking. So like, you may not be the best whatever code developer, and you may not be the best graphic designer, but the combination, like there's one combination of skills that you are world renowned at.
I very much buy into that theory. I think that that's a great way to look at yourself, because it's unrealistic for most people to say, I'm going to be in the top 1% of something. Like, it's just, 99% of the time, that's not going to be true. And it's a lot more attainable and usually more useful for an employer who's usually hiring for a particular team, for you to look for intersections where you are engaged and passionate and also one of the best, right? So I think the example I gave you, John, is that I am an excellent JavaScript developer, but I'm not the best in the world. And I know quite a bit about 2D and 3D rendering and graphics and what goes into that, but I'm certainly not the best in the world there. But I'm probably one of the best unions of those two, right? If you look at the people who are excellent JavaScript developers who can also write a physically based 3D renderer from scratch, right? There's just not many of those people. And that's why I found such a good home at Adobe, where we do both of those things, right? So it's just, when you find a role like that, it feels natural to you if you have the right intersection of skills.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I feel like the concept of the gig economy is like, it has a really bad connotation. And I think that is true if you have, I don't want to sound like crude or harsh, but like if you don't have a skill set, like driving for Uber or, doing like these kind of menial tasks and like on the apps, I think that is kind of rough. But the gig economy, for those who are highly skilled and experienced and have like a track record of consistent wins, it's like the world is your oyster. You can kind of, it's like chart your own, what is it? The build your own novel or narrative book.
Oh, choose your own adventure.
Choose your own adventure. There you go.
Yeah, there's something to that. I think, you use the example of Uber, and I think the challenge there is just that the barrier is relatively low, because the pool of people that you're competing with on wages is anyone who can drive and has a good driving record. And that's not so there are certainly top 1% Uber drivers out there who do an amazing job and like have, could do it better than anyone here could. I think the challenge is that the metrics are probably not there to recognize and reward that. You don't have a huge amount of leverage in work like that, because if you're in technology, for example, if you do something that improves a mega corporation's bottom line by 0.001%, that's huge. It's enormous. You're talking millions of dollars a year, and so you have high leverage. You can write a few lines of code, a few thousand lines of code that have an impact on every user that uses Facebook, Salesforce, Photoshop, et cetera. It's hard to scale that with certain types of jobs. So certain types of work just are really hard to scale in that way.
Oh, okay. Are we gonna be talking about scale right now? Because about a month ago, you came over for a dinner party and we were talking about, you were talking about when you were at Facebook, they encouraged you to like spend, do ad tests or something. And you're like, you can do an ad test for 10% of your overall budget or something. What was the
so at Facebook they have this really awesome system where they're basically they dog food. They have a big dog food and culture, which is great.
What does that mean?
So that means dog food. You eat your own dog food.
I've never heard of this before.
Really? Oh yeah.
Is this like some Facebook or Facebook?
Oh no. This is maybe it's a programmer thing.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea is you eat your own dog food. So I love that culture there, and that so if you're going to build an advertising product, you should also use it and like kind of see how it works. I don't want to pretend that I'm any kind of an expert on advertising, because I'm not. But what I saw is that even a relatively modest grant for doing dog fooding can give you some really interesting insights about how well your advertising is resonating with your target market, or possibly some really niche subset of your target market. So, for me, it was mostly a learning. I'm not a marketer. So, getting to play around with that was really interesting, and getting to see that sometimes an automated machine learning type find the best fit for this market system on autopilot can do an amazing job.
Well, okay, you say you're not a like expert marketer, but I think you have a unique perspective on marketing because I mean, Facebook as a platform is one of the biggest like marketing conduits. Like
Yeah.
when we were at that dinner party, you were talking to the owner of a marketing agency and you were saying something like, "Oh yeah, here's how we think about it." And it just blew his mind. He was like, "We're doing this we have the complete." It was almost like seeing the new world conflate with the old world because you were like,
Yeah,
no,
and
this is how to do it. Yeah.
I know exactly the conversation you're talking about. Yeah, because there's this idea, I think, in marketing, because many people have grown up on this sort of idea that you have to do a really, really curated sort of like you have to define everything and like hand tune your marketing, and and that's what marketing agencies did for a really long time. At this point, a lot of platforms, Facebook just being one of them, are providing sort of like automated tools that will put out, like you mentioned, 10%, like take 10% of a budget and just use machine learning to see who it's resonating with, and which, you can provide a few assets, a few visual assets, a few audio assets, a few text assets, and have automated systems merge them in different ways, and then give you a really fast feedback about what is working and what isn't working, and you are not doing all that tuning. And I think you're right. It is like a old world advertising and new world, let the machine figure it out for you collision, going on.
Well, it's the strategy of, I mean, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So the old way is that, we're going to put together $100,000 ad versus
one perfect ad. Yeah.
Perfect. It's cinematic. You might pull a celebrity in. Now it's like, I'm using a Canon M50 with a wide-angle lens right now. I can shoot 5 different ads within an hour, and then just pay somebody on Fiverr to edit it down, and then have like 5 decent ads. But then we can test different messaging. We can test different backgrounds, maybe even different products. If see how it fits, and then like what we're doing right now with our learning platform is we're doing a weekly test. And we're testing, like maybe not 10. I don't know what our full marketing budget is going to be in the future, but I mean, actually, I can just pull this up and show with you guys. I mean, something that we're trying to, or something we're doing right now is kind of like this. Like you were saying, a lot of these big companies have like open source, like projects. Like we're basically like, here's our data set, here's our strategy, here. Analyze.
It's really interesting that open data is becoming more of a thing too.
Right.
There's been open code for a long time, but yeah, this is a new thing, and I'm really excited about what is it? Building in the open, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've built a learning platform as a conduit to teach my classes at Greensboro College, which I think is a really unique perspective because I feel like I trash academia so much. Most business professors have never ran a business. So like the confluence of the two of those coming together, I think is really fascinating. And I actually just signed on to teach digital marketing next semester. So we're going to have so much fun with this. But so, all right, to kind of go off your theory of, we just had some very preliminary, I can't even say that word, preliminary test where we spent about $500, got 68 clicks. So that's around $7 cost per click. So we've iterated, I think, 5 times over the past 5 weeks. And here's what we've got it down to. So from $7 down to around 3 cents, which is, I'm wondering if we over optimize on that metric though. But this is just like, you were talking about leverage and scale. This is so fascinating to me. And now I'm wondering, and this is a conversation we had, we may have over optimized on cost per click, but I mean, even if it goes from 3 cents to 20 cents, we can still have a pretty relatively large margin if we're selling something for $25, $50, or $100. So have you ever seen this?
I'm nodding, but this is not my area of expertise. You should talk to Hunter Brown about this.
Hunter. So wait, Hunter, you haven't seen this yet, have you?
This is the first time I've been shown this.
Well, yeah. So this was the breakthrough that I was going to say we're going to discuss today.
Yeah.
What is that? I think we did the math. I think it's like 3.9 cents per click.
Okay. Yeah. So what we've done is I've just spun up a very, I don't know if you can see this. But this is the first time I've been shown this. Yeah.
So what we've done is I've just spun up a very, what is it? 3.9 cents per click. So 3.9 cents easy Tableau quick start course, and we're just testing it like a lower price model and seeing if we can. Which is funny is that, Hunter, why were you up at 3 a.m. texting me? Because you texted me this idea.
So I was thinking about ways to improve the efficacy of the marketing for the course and increasing the overall click-through rate. And I was up at 3. I was up in the middle of the night just thinking about it. And I texted John and I was like, hey, maybe we should come up with some kind of like 10-minute or 30-minute long intro course that has like you go in, you learn one hard skill, you get one practical application out of it, and it's a great introduction to the course. And then the next day I wake up and I see that John has uploaded the exact thing that I said, and I was like, did you record this whole thing today? He was like, no, I started this days ago. I just didn't.
So I woke up at 3:30 and saw your text, and I was like, he's brilliant. No, I didn't do that. But that was no. It's so funny because we kind of had like some parallel thinking. But yeah, I think that's an excellent. We'll see. I mean, we're gonna be testing this right now. But what's kind of a shame is that was it this one? I guess it's not a shame, but like with this, we were charging $200 per course, and I think that it's just too high of a price point, which is just frustrating. But I mean, it is what it is. This is like this. We're doing ad tests right now, so. But Hunter Loftis, to your point, we had a conversation. I heard what you said, and I was like, all right, we're gonna. Although we tried smart ads on Google Ads, and they didn't seem to work. Are the Facebook smart ads like really effective? Like.
So I cannot pretend to know the difference between the effectiveness of Google Smart Ads and Facebook Smart Ads. So yeah, I just can't speak to that. I've seen that smart ads in general can be very effective. They can also do what you're describing, right? Anytime you're throwing machine learning at a problem, you can over optimize for a certain shape. You know, there have been some famous examples of, you know, people trying to use like neural nets in video games, and then you end up with like a character that's supposed to be a biped actually hopping on one leg backwards because it turns out that's the fastest way to like navigate through the level or whatever, right? So, you know, so you can't just completely trust the computer and go off the rails. But I think all of these companies, like everybody that's in the ad space, Facebook and Google and all the rest, are like every year making steady progress in how effective a computer can be at finding advertising market fit.
Right. Well, I think part of what, like, I just kind of had this thought pop in my head as you were responding. I think we might have had like $500 maybe too small of a testing budget. It might need to be like $1,000 or $10,000 to really I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like a data size issue.
I think you guys are the expert on that.
Well, but you said that you were having, what do you call it, a dog?
Yes, you get like I think you can, as long as you have a representatively large sample of sample size, right? As long as you're testing with a broad number of people in the market that you're actually achieving, I suspect that the dollar amount matters less than how statistically relevant your test is, right? Because different advertising targets have wildly different costs. So there's no point at which you can say, oh, well, $1,000 is enough to test this, or $200 is enough to test this, or $10,000 is enough to test this, right? If you look at like the most expensive versus the least expensive, like Google ad terms, it's vast. So I don't think looking at it in terms of dollars is going to give you the answer. You know, you need to look at how many people that I reach with this many dollars, and am I confident that number of people is actually enough to give me a really good signal about whether or not this campaign is working.
Right. So, I mean, for sure, we had 800,000 impressions, 40,000 views. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's a really good click-through rate. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I noticed, like kind of just scanning the data, is that it's an area, like the majority of the clicks are coming from generally kind of like low GDP. So they don't have, I'm curious how much discretionary income the people who are clicking on these ads have, which we'll have the results on that in a week from now, which is, I mean, this I'm having so much fun like building this narrative and just like you're getting to see how, I mean, this is a extremely bootstrapped operation. Like, did I tell you how much it costs for me to build a platform?
No, how much?
$1,500 to get the platform stood up. And then I spent all summer. I mean, the thing, I put a bunch of sweat equity into it because all summer I took on no consulting engagements and just worked on the platform, which was a grueling experience. I think I need a little bit more human face-to-face interaction. But so yeah, what's interesting too is that what we did with this display network is the new strategy that we haven't really unpacked yet.
What is that? What is that?
Okay, so my understanding from my marketing manager is that there are thousands of websites that play videos that are not on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing is we're having these videos played on those websites.
Oh, okay.
So it still feels very vague and kind of like murky to me. I need to do some more. Actually, that's an intern assignment, I think, right there.
Oh, okay.
I can hand that off to you. But I mean, just the amount of clicks, like 10,000 clicks, there's got to be at least somebody who could spend $25. At least one.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe 3.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, 4. But okay.
I wondered. So I want to kind of circle back around for a second and talk
we're all
about,
over the place today.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to like your career, specifically when you first get hired. I think a lot of people struggle with the idea that when they first are hired, they're like at the bottom of an organization. They're starting from the bottom. They have to work their way all the way up, and they don't know anybody. I mean, they're brand new. I think oftentimes that depending on the company culture, somebody can feel a little bit lost in the weeds at that point. Hunter, obviously, other Hunter. Do you feel that there's any specific steps that a person like that who feels lost in the weeds can take to expedite the process of promotion in the tech space?
I love that question. I love that question because there are so many things about that I didn't understand until I got to see how a promotion works on the other side when I was the one putting someone up for promotion. Raises are similar, hiring, same thing. So the first thing I'll say is that I was very surprised to find as a manager that your manager wants you to bring up your career trajectory with them. Early in my career, I was terrified to sit down with my manager and be like, hey, what do I need to do to get a raise or get a promotion? Or this is where I want my career to go. How can you help me get there? I thought that was like imposing, but like that's their job, right? And at most major corporations, part of the manager training is here at X, our careers are self-driven. So in many cases, your manager is waiting for you to say, hey, can we have a career conversation? Like they want you to. And when you finally say, hey, can we have a career conversation? They're going to be really excited. They're going to get to go through, the requirements for your current role and level. And they're going to look at the requirements for the next level in that role. And they're going to look for gaps there. And then they're going to come to a meeting and they're going to be like, here are some ideas about what we can do, projects we can put you on, et cetera, to get you to that next level. They want to do that, right? Managers, like the best part about being a manager is being able to give somebody a raise or a promotion. That's like the best feeling. And then also selfishly, having high level people in your org gives you clout as a manager. There's not a fixed budgetary pie. You've got this head count thing. So, so it's not a zero sum game. If you get a raise or a promo, it doesn't mean that somebody else in your same org can't get that, right? So, if you have started somewhere and you're not sure how to get to the next level or how to get to where you want to in that org, frankly, that is a big part of your manager's job. And you should say, hey, let's sit down, let's have a career conversation. Let's map out where I am right now, where I think I am, and also where you think I am. And then let's talk about where I'd like to get to. And they will, if they're a decent manager, they'll be enthusiastic about that conversation.
I want to chime in here So the thing I like about managing people is the power. And I'm just kidding. It's the power. No. So, okay. Getting back to that conversation we had about like you negotiating your salary, or like at least having offers and saying, this is where I'm at. This is what the market values me. It lets me orient where I think about you and how you plug into the organization. So it's like, it's mitigating risk on my end. So I know what you're thinking. I know where you're at. And it's interesting because one thing that I had a thought earlier, but somebody was going on a really good riff on some idea, was that what I don't want to have happen is that you turn down really good opportunities. We work for 5 years and you slowly build up resentment towards me. Like, I don't want to have that because it's like a weird, like underhanded, hostile work environment,
Mm-hmm.
Because and that's an issue that I have because I take up a lot of space and I'm having to work to proactively listen more to people. And it's a struggle for me. But I think that, that's another kind of unintended consequence. And also too, if you may find yourself in a position where your manager is threatened by you, and then that you probably need to get out of that situation. Because like Hunter Loftis,
are you threatened by me?
I'm inspired by you.
Oh.
No, but so Hunter Loftis, you were saying that most managers, is that kind of like FANG or like big companies?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like my experience is heavily skewed, right? For the last decade, I've basically worked in the Fortune 26. So the largest 26 companies by revenue in the US. So like I'm pretty focused on that world. And so it might be different for a small business or for a startup. I've never been a manager at a startup, for example. So these aren't universally true statements, but I think they are statistically useful statements because by virtue of being huge companies, these companies tend to employ an outsized number of tech workers, right? So a huge number of people work for Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple and et cetera, Salesforce, Adobe. So,
well, okay. I think the concept that needs to be kind of unpacked is there's network effects. So the Fortune 200 or 26 companies, they're so big that they have this huge amount of excess capital. I was reading something or watching something where like Google has so much money, they don't even know how to invest it all right now. Like that's one of their biggest struggles is like, we have all of this billions of dollars. Where do we put it so that we get a return on that? What a
problem to have.
Right. So if you're at a smaller company, there may be some more competition and you may be a threat to your manager. So, I mean, that's just because I actually like that you are in those like larger companies because my consulting practice is like 250 million and less in revenue. So I'm seeing the complete opposite end of the marketplace.
Well, and I think if you're talking about the career marketplace in a smaller place, like you can be flexible on things other than total comp, right? Like total comp is just one way to evaluate a role. There's a lot of other things, right? Is it remote first? Is it going to teach you to be an expert in some domain that you care about? Does it have a flexible schedule for you? All of these things are going to determine like where you apply, how you network, what you learn and practice, right? So there are benefits that a small company can offer that a big company can't. So if you're a small company trying to attract talent and you're competing with total comp with like a Facebook, that's going to be challenging. So you might have to get creative about other things that you offer that would be hard to replicate at scale.
Okay, so this is the question that I think is going to be really fascinating. So Hunter Loftis, what's your degree in?
That's kind of mean. I don't have a degree, John.
But it's so impressive that you are like top tier because we get people asking those questions of like, I don't have a degree. How do I navigate in this space? And I think that you are uniquely positioned to give them some advice.
So I want to start by saying that having a degree is never going to hurt you, right? Okay. If you can get a computer science degree or similar, it's actually a great thing to have, right? I would love to have a computer science degree. But one of my favorite things about this industry is that it can be transformative for anyone. And it is possible to, I don't want to say that there are no gatekeepers in the industry, because that's not totally true. But in many places, you have to be selected to even have a chance, right? You have to apply somewhere to be even accepted into a degree program. And that can gate your ability to ever even get into that field. Whereas in tech, you can bring your own experience, right? Like if you wanted to this weekend start hacking with the exact same technology that Fang uses, if you wanted to use the databases they use and the operating systems they use and the CI/CD systems they use and the code editors they use, and like that's all accessible to you and largely free with services like Heroku. So so we're uniquely in an industry where if you want to sort of gate crash, even without a degree, you can.
Yeah. Well, it's really fascinating to me because it seems like having a degree is like it's a huge threshold for most people, but you have found how to I mean, you're doing better than I would say like 95% of people who have degrees.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how many people have degrees or not. I am very happy with how the industry has turned out. I can't say that it was a strategic decision. When I left school to go get my first full-time job programming, I can't say that was like a strategic, I didn't say, well, what's the opportunity cost of continuing in school versus like starting my career now? And I didn't have like a crystal ball that showed me that like tech was about to explode and any stock that you made 8 years ago in a tech company was kind of balloon in size. I didn't know those things. They happened to be true. I don't know that they'll always be true.
But was the calculus like I can either pay? Well, you told me this. You were like, I knew more than my professors
about programming. Programming, but that's also sort of unique because I was paying for school by programming, right? Like I was working as a software developer in order to pay for school. So unlike my professors who like were working as teachers, I was every day like writing code. Like that's what I was doing all day. And then I would go and, sort of talk in the abstract sense about the way you might have written code like 5 or 10 years before, so.
Yeah, well, okay. So that's an interesting point into itself. So these traditional academia lags behind the technology curve, and it's really hard for them to keep up.
Yeah. I don't envy them. It would be really hard to be a teacher and keep up with the industry.
I mean, it's the Red Queen. It's like you got to run as fast as you can just to stay put. I don't know if you've heard of the Red Queen theory. It's
I have not.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, it's the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
But what? Okay, so not having the degree, has it hindered? It sounds like it hasn't hindered you too much, though.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what I would hypothetically be doing without it. But I'm really satisfied with how things have worked out. There's not like a thing that I would change necessarily. So I don't know that this is universally true, but most of the hiring managers in tech that I know of, because you are not evaluated on hiring the most credentialed candidate, you're evaluated on whether or not the person you hired can actually do the job, right? Like the reflection of your hires comes back to you at calibration and performance review time, when you have to provide concrete evidence that this person that you're spending 6 figures on is actually delivering value to the org. And if you can do that, great. You look like a competent manager. And if you can't, it really doesn't matter how many degrees that person has.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so interesting though, because I think you at the time you were like, I could either go into debt or, I know you're extremely frugal. So you're like, this isn't worth it. I'm paying for something. And then you just, I mean,
there was definitely a point at time decision like that. Absolutely. Because I was working part-time and paying for school. And then I got an offer that I just frankly I initially did not believe was real. I thought it was a scam because I had never worked in tech before. So
I love this. You told the story when we were at Sticks and Stones, but please share it. It's great.
Well, I did not even show up to the interview. A friend told me that, this company is hiring. I don't want to get too much into details because
okay, because we're broadcasting it out. All right.
We're broadcasting. I don't want to I don't want to get too much into details. But a friend told me about this job. And I was like, that's not a real thing. There's no way someone would pay you that much to do the thing that we already do. It just doesn't make sense. And then he actually showed up to the interview and got an offer. And I was like, you've got to be kidding. This is real. This is not a scam. They're not trying to lure me somewhere so that they can try to convince me to sell knives door to door. Right. And keep in mind, at this time, most of my professional experience was delivering pizzas for Papa John's. Right. So that's the, and so when I found out it wasn't, I was like, would you guys still be interested in interviewing? And the market was so tight that they actually did not mind doing a second interview the next day. And I got the job and I dropped out of school because, again, at the time, I thought it was a crazy fluke. I was like, there's no way that this is going to continue. I'm going to get on this while it's feasible. And then at some point, they're going to realize that they're insane for paying me this much to write some JavaScript. And then whenever that happens and they let me go, then I'll go back to school. And that was 10 years ago. So,
wow, that's such an interesting Batman origin story. Hunter Brown, do you have any questions, Haley?
No, I'm just sitting here thinking about how incredible it is that you could do something like that. It would be terrifying to me, to be honest with you. First of all, it'd be terrifying to me for personal reasons because my parents, I think, would have my behind. But second of all, I mean, it's going into a new space. Well, I guess for you, it wasn't really a new space. So, wow, just bravo.
I think that you are doing it right. So my decision was really driven out of fear in a way, right? It was fear that this opportunity wasn't going to last for very long. And, if I had hung out at school for a little bit, I could simultaneously have a good career today and have a degree alongside that. Right. So I actually think it's a great idea if you're in a degree program to go ahead and finish it. Especially if you're like me and you're in, your fourth year, that's a big opportunity cost to drop out. So, so my decision was driven out of fear. It ended up working out really well, but I don't know that that's always going to be true for everybody.
Well, you always hear about those like Steve Jobs type scenarios.
I will not compare myself with,
we're talking
Gates
to
or Jobs.
one of these tech wizards here.
Right. I should have worn a hoodie.
Okay, Hunter Loftis, I've got a question for you. Okay, so it sounded like early on in your career you were very scarcity based, but now you're coming from a place of abundance. What was the tipping point from one kind of feeling or perspective to the next?
That is a really good question and a good insight because you're totally right. Early in my career, because I was ignorant about how the tech space worked, and so I was thinking from a scarcity mindset. The tipping point, I think. Let me think. Oh, actually, I could tell you exactly where the tipping point was. So several years later, I got a job offer to go work for a company in San Francisco. And in San Francisco, it is like the market situation in the tech space become physical. Like you can't walk down the street without someone trying to recruit you for their company, their startup, their whatever. If you meet a VC in a bar, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, do you have any ideas you're working on?" Like, I'm always looking for something to fund. It is a place where if you're a capable tech worker, you can leave a job in the morning and have a awesome job that afternoon. And so just seeing that, experiencing that like viscerally, I think sort of shifted my outlook on the industry and made me realize that maybe this is actually like something that you can get comfortable in and even expect. And it's not just an outlier that's going to happen for a couple of years.
Yeah. I think that is what would be interesting to know right now is does that still hold true? Because I think COVID has shifted the working climate. So like now people can work remotely and they can get all kinds of jobs. So I'm wondering if the new San Francisco, physical location is like, are they online communities? Is it on LinkedIn? Like, because Hunter Brown, you've had multiple people reach out to you, and you're a junior and undergrad for analytics positions. So I don't know if it's because we're broadcasting in a consistent basis, and we've got 2 analytics VPs in our live chat right now. So shout out to Matt Bratton and Alex Moy.
Nice subtle way to show that you're paying him an exposure, John.
But Hunter, where are these coming from? Have you asked them like how they found you yet?
Yeah, so I think a lot of them are. I asked 1 or 2 recruiters actually how they'd found me, and LinkedIn Recruiter, they responded, was the way that they had found me. And so apparently my presence through posting on the channel on LinkedIn and updating my portfolio, which hadn't happened until I hadn't had an updated portfolio until the first half of last year. When I took John David's when I took John David's class in.
So just to clarify, there was a clear before time and a clear after time.
Yes.
My class.
There was a clear before and after time for John David's class, and it did improve my portfolio a lot. I started getting recognized. I mean, a big part of it was understanding my strengths, understand how those strengths can tie into keywords that show up in the algorithm, understanding how you can show recruiters what you're about without having to write them a thesis about it. It's something that was a learned ability for me, and that was what I had to. That was something that I had to adapt to as I kept getting more and more messages. It's like wow, these people are they're actually genuinely interested in what I'm doing. It's like I was just doing this because I think it's fun, and it's something that I learned a lot from, and it's like, hey, they recognize that, so super cool.
Yeah, it sounds like you're already somewhat in an abundance place now, which is really cool. I mean, you probably feel some like scarcity of like the existential dread of the use is what I'm starting to get used to.
I think that's like imposter syndrome to a certain extent, where it's like you people are recognizing you, and it's like you're like, okay, I mean I like to think I do a good job for myself, but I'm not the best on the planet. Please just it's I think it's all ties back into imposter syndrome, which everybody experiences at some point or another. And so yeah, I do feel that way still to a certain extent, where it's like I don't exactly know. I most of the time I reach out to them and I say, hey, I love that you connected. Thank you for finding me. I hope we can stay a connection. Right now I'm not looking for anything new. Where it's like I don't know. It's just interesting to get all these new things. It's just a bunch of new experiences that I haven't felt like people like want me. That sounds bad, right? But like you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Right? I know Matt's gonna say something about that.
You don't feel valued.
That's no. It's
like you don't feel like people value in a professional setting.
Yeah. I guess
that's most young people. It's like you're in this like Padawan / apprentice phase where, I mean, to be frank, it's probably a net loss day to day, but then if it pops, it's going to be worth the company's value long term.
Haley had something to say to that, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know what you mean. I know what Hunter Brown is talking about. So I just for context, I learned to code during the pandemic. I was working as a garden and landscape designer. I have a history in nonprofit, chasing grants, couldn't chase any more grants, found myself designing things. And a pandemic came, and I decided that I was essential, but not in that sense. I needed to live, so I had to learn to do something else. So I learned to code, and Hunter's right. You go from having, like, obviously I had discernible skills, but having discernible tech skills, you go from having, nothing to all of a sudden people are like, you have this thing that we need, and we're going to pay you to do that. And you're like, what? Do this?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a superpower. Like once you get really, really competent at it. I mean, you've got, I don't know if he's more of a Superman or Batman. Hunter Loftis here. What was that party that I went to? You were dressed as a Ninja Turtle.
I'm definitely a Ninja Turtle.
Which Ninja Turtle? Which Ninja Turtle? I have to know.
Donatello. Always Donatello.
Best one.
The best
All right.
one. Yeah. Why do you even ask? Yeah.
All right.
Well, why did you? How dare you ask that question? I had a thought. You guys totally distracted me. Oh no, I totally blanked. You get Hunter or Haley?
Was it about pizza or the sewer? Because there's.
It was about what was the rat's name again? And
Splinter.
Yeah, Splinter, dude.
I grew up on Dragon Ball Z, not Ninja Turtles.
You're making me feel old.
Excuse me. It was recruiters. So did we get down that thread? Like I brought it up, and I think the conversation got sidetracked in a different rabbit hole, which was fine. But you were talking about how recruiters at a high level function with top talent. Did we go down that rabbit hole already?
I don't know if we did. Yeah, recruiters are interesting. Some people sort of like humble brag about disliking recruiters. I actually love recruiters for a couple of reasons. Like the day that recruiters stop reaching out to us in tech is like the day that we should all start like saving more heavily, right? Because that'll be the beginning of the end times. But also, I've known several people whose careers have been transformed by a good recruiter who's like their agent. I've known good recruiters and bad recruiters. If anybody wants to meet good recruiters, I'm always happy to introduce them. And in the tech meetups that I've organized, we've usually had sponsors that are recruiters, and they've usually actually been like, not the trope. Like they've been well informed. They know the difference between Java and JavaScript, et cetera. And, they, in many ways, they know the industry better than anyone else. If you can find a friend who's a recruiter, like go like turn the tables a little bit and offer to buy them a drink and pick their brains a little bit. And also be really, look for opportunities to introduce other people. Like it doesn't always have to be about you and your opportunities. Like look for opportunities that you think other folks might be at the right intersection for. Work with recruiters, not against them, I guess is the way I would put it.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that a little bit, you were saying that what you can do is develop a relationship with a really solid recruiter, and then if they're good at what they do, they're going to get the preferential jobs. And if you've worked with, go ahead. Sounds like you want to chime in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not even just preferential jobs, but they understand your intersection. They understand which roles would be a slam dunk for you, right? And they, so I don't really work with recruiters anymore because most really large tech companies have their own internal recruiters, right? So, Salesforce does, Adobe does, Facebook does. But many banks use external recruiters. And I used to work for banks when I was living in Charlotte. And those recruiters can be great. They usually develop long-term relationships with people, and if you prove that you can go in and deliver and actually communicate what you're going to do and then do it, your manager will love you, your recruiter will love you, and then they will reach out to you when they see some amazing opportunity that they think that you would be a really good fit for. I know people who hop from recruiter contract to recruiter contract. I actually know one guy who basically works like 1 to 2 quarters a year on a contract because the shorter a contract is, the more you get paid per hour. And then just travels the rest of the year. right? And the reason he's able to do that is because he has excellent relationships with a recruiter who is essentially his agent at this point.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Because I've been on Upwork and I just won consulting engagement off there, but it's kind of the opposite where you are one of many. Okay. Well, yeah, I think that is a really fascinating concept of building long-term relationships with recruiters. And Hunter, I'm so happy and proud that you're already getting contacted by recruiters. I mean, it sounds like
I think it's a good reflection on the community that we've built, to be honest with you. Because, prior to, I mean, considering the before and after.
Wait, what do you mean the before, after the class?
Oh, the class, the joining the podcast, the intern at.
We've had some really big wins the past 6 to 9 months, I would say. You know, we helped Molly pivot into her entry level data science job. Al got 3 offers after he was our social media manager, which was awesome.
Abe got a job.
That's true. Yeah. So and then also too, like now we're live streaming the Greensboro College class, which I don't know what that's going to look like long term, because I mean, who knows? But I'm giving so much free education on the Tuesday live stream, and we've even kind of pivoted the channel to focus more on the education side. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited, and also we have Haley who's joining us here. So, Matt Bratton just said Abe's got 12 jobs. So I think Abe is doing social media for artist data science, and he's got a financial analytics job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Abe, when I for the short time that I was able to know him, because he seems like he is MIA, being so busy from everything. He was always industrious. He's a great worker, and I think people notice that, and now look at him. He's got 2, not 1, but 2 high-paying jobs that are doing well for him. So,
yeah, I mean, it relates to so Dan Sanchez said in the chat, it seems like those who are successful at anything don't rest on the laurels of their degree. Success starts with toiling behind the scenes prior to seeking a credential. What do you agree, disagree? Hunter Loftis, what are your thoughts? Weigh in on that.
I mean, yeah, I think that actually makes sense. 80% of success is really just showing up, and and there's this. It sounds very simple, but it's hard to do. Many of your late career options are going to be from your previous career network, right? And it's going to be referrals and like warm introductions and things like that. That's just how it works. But you only get those things if you have a track record of committing to something, saying, I'm going to do this, and here's why, and then actually shipping, actually doing it, right? And it sounds very simple. Commit and then ship, and you just repeat that through your career until people have a high degree of confidence that if you commit to something, it'll actually get done. Very few people can reliably do that. And so I think while you're getting a degree, after you get a degree before you're going to school, all of these times, like there is a trait of people who tend to succeed, at least in this world. And it's people who can commit and then ship.
Well, I would say that's how you build true inner confidence. Is they call it demonstrated performance. So you do what you say you're going to do, and you can, because it's almost like you start to trust yourself. Because I think a lot of people, and I'm somewhat guilty of this, where I have so many shiny objects in front of me that what's funny is like, okay, on Wednesday when we were hanging out at 6 and 7, I was like, man, I feel so weird. I kept saying that
every few minutes. You kept saying that.
It's because I was suffering from exhaustion. Because I've just been doing so much work. I need to figure out how to. The thing that I am, it's funny because I was talking about how you went from scarcity to abundance thinking. I am actively trying to make that shift right now, because I am kind of afraid. I have so many opportunities in front of me. I'm kind of afraid to turn down any one, because what if that's like a big lever right there?
That was exactly my thinking. Yeah.
What?
When I was in a scarcity mindset, that was exactly my thinking. I was afraid of turning down a good opportunity because I thought maybe this won't come again.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, and what I'm realizing, or like, at least I understand this on a intellectual level, is that if I spread myself for too thin for too long, I'm going to mess up all of the opportunities instead of focusing on the few that are really, and that's where judgment comes in. And I'm like actively trying to cultivate that. And I don't know, how do you build judgment?
I don't know if I'll put myself forward as somebody who has great judgment, but I think that something I've learned over the years is that something that helps me as a really analytical thinker is to figure out what my criteria are for a decision, and then to evaluate all the options based on that criteria. Right? That's
what do you mean by that? What do you mean criteria?
Criteria, as in so think about all the dimensions that let's say a job offer. Let's say Hunter Brown's getting several offers. Let's say you've got four offers you're evaluating.
Just four?
Look at for simplicity, right? And think about, what's the total comp? What is the work-life balance going to be? How flexible is your time going to be? Are any of them remote first, and do you even care about that? Are any of them in domains that you are interested in? Maybe based on your headset, you love video games, and one of them is with a gaming company, right? And that might actually have some weight to you. How interesting is this domain for me? Come up with those first. Don't be thinking about the offers. Come up with what matters to you, your objective criteria about how to evaluate these things, and then take each one of your offers and give it a ranking in each one of these criteria that are ordered in some way for you, and then usually one or two will bubble to the top. It might let you eliminate some. Like, for example, maybe you decide, and I think this would probably be a good decision, that early in your career, total comp should not be at the top of your list. You'll be making, when you're 30 or whatever, when you're 35, you'll be making twice what you were making at 25. It's just probably going to happen that way. And so optimizing for a few $1,000s when you're 25 is sometimes not a good strategic move. It might feel good to make an extra $5,000 when you're 25, but you really won't care about that $5,000 when you're 35. What you will care about is whether you got any special expertise in something that you want to turn into your career down the line, right? What you will care about is whether you got to live in a place that you wanted to live in when you were 25. There are other things that would probably trump that. But if you don't define that in advance, then you might look at these offers and you're like, oh my God, these guys are willing to pay me more. I'm just going to take the biggest offer. And that isn't always the best.
Yeah. I'm actually reading this book on grounding, like how to be grounded. And I mean, that's essentially what you laid out. Like, you need to have your value structure and then run everything through that. But it's just hard. It's hard right now because there's just so much coming at me. And I'm like, and it's like, they're like little savory little opportunities that I just have a hard time saying no to. But cool. Well, this is Hunter Loftis. This has been amazing. I feel like there was one point that I wanted to close on. Well, Haley, Hunter, you guys got any more questions before we say adieu?
No, Hunter, I think you brought a lot of valuable insights to the table. I don't have any more questions. If Haley doesn't,
I don't have any other questions either. But I agree with Hunter. A lot of relevant takeaways here. So thank you.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've just done you've had a really interesting career trajectory, and I think you're also a very thoughtful individual too. Like I think a lot of successful people, it's just like they're so driven that it's like this narrow-minded. You seem to be pretty, like I was saying, like I think I admire that you're a lot more grounded than I am, at least at this juncture in our lives.
I think I'll blame my wife for that. She's the reason that I have a variety in my life, and that we're living in a nice, pleasant little house in Greensboro versus, a mattress on the floor of an apartment in San Francisco. That's probably where I would be without her. So
yeah, well, it's funny because okay. This is what I wanted to close on. So Hunter Loftis, how did I meet you?
I think we ran into each other at Odin, right? Having beers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tim Leesman, who's been on the podcast, Code for Greensboro, and Triad.js, which you used to run, you're now just a part of. They did a meetup, and that's how I ran into you. And it turns out that you live like 8 doors down from me on the same street.
Yeah.
So now we're like buddies and go and walk down to the bar that's like 3 blocks away.
It's been awesome to meet so many people on this street that are all in the tech space. We've got a little startup if we ever want one. So
that's true. Yeah. So I guess the closing advice would be, if you guys have access to local communities, go and get active. It's going to be a little awkward maybe at first, but I mean, the people want you there, so they're going to try to at least make some introductions.
And if you don't have a local community, you can always start one. There's guaranteed to be some group of fellow nerds who want to talk about similar nerdy stuff wherever you're living.
Awesome. Well, Hunter Loftis, Haley, Hunter Brown, thank you guys so much for being on. Also, thanks everybody for being in the live chat. This has been really fun. We'll see you guys.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.